Dealing with the death of a tenant is never an easy or an enjoyable experience. And although everyone hopes to never have to deal with this kind of situation, it's important to be prepared. In these situations, the process can be a little complicated. But the most important thing is for it to be done safely, legally, and respectfully. If you're not sure about what steps to take if a tenant dies while leasing your rental property, keep watching. Hi, welcome back. My name is Santiago Marino with DoorLoop. And today, we're going to talk about the complete process for dealing with a tenant's death. Before we get started, I do want to remind you that I am not an attorney and I cannot give you any legal advice or financial advice. The one thing that I can tell you is to make sure that you like this video and subscribe to our channel for more real estate content. In this first section, we will go over the first steps that should be taken when a tenant's death is discovered. First steps after discovering a tenant's death. It may be difficult for unprepared landlords to know what to do when they discover a tenant's death. The first steps actually depend on how the landlord found out about it. So let's go over some of the most common scenarios when dealing with this kind of situation. Outside notice. The most common way in which a landlord may find out about a tenant's death is by a family member. If someone related to the tenant contacts the landlord about the death, it is important that the landlord receives a written notice. Although it may be insensitive to request written confirmation, this is a legal matter and should be dealt with legally. If the landlord discovers the deceased tenant in the property. In the worst case scenario, the landlord themselves discovers the deceased tenant within the tenant's property. When this happens, it is essential that the authorities be contacted immediately. At that point, they will take care of contacting any family members and transporting the deceased. If there is no family member to contact, the authorities will direct the landlord on retaining a death certificate. After the death has been established, the property can be rented out once again. In these cases, it is best if the landlord keeps contact with the property to a minimum until the legal process and any kind of investigation has been finalized. However, it is still a good idea to secure the property. This means locking any windows, doors, or other entryways. Sometimes the landlord will also see to it that any pets are taken care of in the meantime. If the landlord does this, it is extremely important that everything is recorded or done in front of a witness. Okay, so now that the property has been secured and the tenant's death has been established, there is one important question. What happens to the lease agreement? What is done with the lease agreement after the tenant's death? Determining what to do with the lease agreement after a tenant's death can be troublesome. Landlords typically want to be compassionate, but still have unpaid rent, a security deposit, and the tenant's belongings. For this reason, there are a couple of steps to take in order to resolve the issue with the lease. Contact the executor. The first thing that should always be done to correct a broken lease agreement is to contact the tenant's executor. The estate executor is the person appointed by the deceased tenant in their will that will take care of making sure all property and personal belongings are directed in the right way. At this point, it is a good idea to look over state and local laws to decide on what to do next. In most states, the executor can be held accountable for any missing rent payments or any other terms of the rental agreement. The landlord also has the option to rent out the property to a subletter to free the executor from the obligation of paying rent. However, in many cases, instead of having the executor cover unpaid rent, they simply agree to end the agreement. This depends on a variety of factors, like whether it is an apartment lease, how much is left on the term, and the deceased estate's ability to pay. Okay, so now after coming to an agreement about the lease agreement, it is time to deal with the tenant's belongings. Transporting the tenant's belongings. Following a tenant's death, it is probable that the property will be filled with their personal belongings. Although the property cannot be rented out in these conditions, it is important to consider the feelings of the deceased tenant's family during this time. That's why the executor and the landlord should set up a realistic timeline for removing all of the belongings. The time frame can be anywhere from 2 weeks to 30 days. Also, it is up to the landlord's discretion whether or not to charge rent for this time. If there are no family members to take care of the belongings, the landlord should refer to local and state laws regarding abandonment. Some laws require that the belongings be stored for a certain time before being sold at an auction. And if no family member is found, the money received from these belongings at the auction may be returned to the state. Security deposit. After the tenant's death, the landlord will most likely still have the deceased tenant's security deposit. The security deposit can be used to cover any damages past normal wear and tear. It can also be used to assist with moving costs for their personal belongings or cleaning costs. If any of the money still remains, it should be sent to the executor, along with a list of things that show what the money was used for. If the cost of moving and cleaning is more than the amount of the security deposit, the landlord has the right to petition the executor to compensate for the difference. If you want to learn more about your state laws regarding this kind of situation, go ahead and visit DoorLoop's laws page to quickly find information on your own state and local laws. There's a link right there in the description for you. Final steps after the tenant's death. The final steps after the tenant's death in order to reclaim possession of the property is to have some form signed, the most important of which is a release to the rights of possession form. This form allows you to take legal repossession of the property and rent it out to someone else. Okay, so that's about it. Although there are many steps that must be taken when dealing with a tenant's death, the most important thing is to be patient and respectful. It is important to always consider what their family will be going through and to be compassionate. Ultimately, it will be more important than ever to stay organized at a time like this and to contact all of the appropriate people to take over your tenant's possessions. Or if the possessions are unwanted or unclaimed after a reasonable period of time, dispose of them in a legal manner. Experiencing the death of a tenant can be difficult for many reasons, but once all of the logistical matters have been dealt with, you should be able to move forward with your unit as you see fit. So, that is all for now. Remember, if you want to get access to more real estate videos on topics such as how to send a new property manager introduction letter, or the top 10 most important landlord-tenant laws to always remember, as well as free templates for your real estate business, make sure to check out DoorLoop's resources page. There's a link right there in the description. You can click on that before or after you click on that like and subscribe button. All right? And also share this with your friends. If you have any other friends that are into real estate, this video might be beneficial for them as well. And as always, happy renting.